Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about the electric and electromagnetic, so to speak, reality of subtle energy physics and radionics and so forth in general. Well, there is a reason why these pseudo-electrical tools tend to work so well, which make absolutely no pure electrical sense. And that's why using components of electric in nature, when you're not really running electricity through radionic circuits, tends to make the items work. And why electrical add-ons, things like amplifiers, transmitters, etc., tend to help the process. So we do need to understand that there's a combining of energies. These energies that are combined are not just what are considered psychoenergetic in nature. Now, your basic strong manifesting fields and even the occultons, energetic informational fields, are not Hertzian in nature as a rule. I do believe there is a component of them, a very small component that is. But you are a electromagnetic device. You're basically this chemical battery. That's what your brain is. And your brain is constantly putting out these electric signals. That's what happens when in the brain, your brain fires what he considered lightning type bolts constantly, small microvolts all over the place. This is what's calling brain working. When these shut off, you have what's called a seizure, and the lights go off literally, and everything in your consciousness stops, which is frightening. I've talked a little bit about this before, and it's quite amazing because you're done. Put a fork in it, it's done. Frightening. So, are we to then discount and to say that we are entirely physical entity beings? Well, while we're conscious, we can tap into that completely non-physical existence that is out there. Consciousness, in general, is this non-physical reality, but it is hooked up to this physical reality. So, occultons, informational energetic fields, are a combination of many different things. Now, these occulton fields is what everybody's trying to work on, past just saying, well, we're going to shoot Hertzian energies into something. These are measurable electrical fields that can be quantified because you can put a meter on it. How many hertz is that? And then, of course, we say, yeah, that's real. We can put a meter on it. Well, this is certainly a reality, and when people do brain mappings and they check these things, you can get the actual frequencies coming out of your head. So that is a component. Now, there's the other component to things, which is this whole new subtle energy physics reality. And as I come out with books and courses, this will be explained of where the ultimate power comes from. But the problem is we are this battery, whether we like it or not. And we cannot just disregard it and say, well, we're not this physical energy. Now, when you're using radionic consciousness machines, your consciousness is this double component of this non-physical fields, which actually can be quantified, they can be measured, etc. It's just that it's an energetic field that people just don't quite understand. And while we're working on meters and other things, this is a momentous process to go ahead and take the unknown non-physical and then measure it through devices and other things is a process that certainly can be done, but takes huge amounts of very skilled researchers and, as usual, lots of money. So what does that mean? That means that progress is slow and nobody's really interested in this stuff. Nobody buys into it. So subtle energy physics, which is really the physics of everything, how the essence of life works, unlike regular physics, which ain't got it, and theoretical physics, which is totally confused. All of these things have some interesting components to them, but when you put them all together, it don't work. You plug it in and nothing happens. And that's the problem. When you plug in subtle energy physics, all sorts of things happen. But let's get back into it. The reason why you use these kind of components and machines and so forth is because there is an element of these Hertzian type fields, these very subtle energy, ultra low frequencies, that you are starting to put out when you are using these machines. This is why it's so important to be connected to machines, to hold machines, in terms of having handles, to have helmets with wires that go into the machine. Now, you would say, well, I thought that telepathy and everything else was not a physical, actual measurable field. Well, it is a physical, and there are these ELF waves, ultra low frequency, that are combined with it, and these play an important part in the way these machines work. This is why you're doing tunings and turning dials, and you're going into wires that conduct these energies. Now, it doesn't have to be commonly measurable, meaning that you are putting crude electrical energies through the machine. Some people do this, but generally it's not going through the dials or anything else. Some of them just have electricity with these radionic machines that just go to a light bulb, because when you click a machine on, you want to say, oh, something happened, but the electricity is not going through them. But not the large crude, but there is a bioenergy, a consciousness energy that is going through these machines, as well as the psychoenergetic fields. So this is important to understand of how these machines work. This is why these machines that don't have any electrical power in them still tend to work to a certain degree. And they've been used for many, many years, very successful by many different practitioners. I think this is low-level technology, and we need to move past it because they just aren't as powerful as electrified machines. Plain and simple. This has been tested for many years. They don't give you the same kick. But if you are psychically powerful and produce stronger ELF waves, well, these machines can be very effective for you personally. The masses, no. But if you're a very psychic person, which means you're putting off a lot of psychic fields, these non-Hertzian fields, you're also putting out these ELF fields, which go through this technology or project out as well. So when you make a device, is what we're getting to the point here, you want to make sure that you also take in this electrical component to it. And that is the fact that you want to piggyback on regular electrical energies. And this can be distorted. You know, one of the things that we use all the time that has a fantastic empowerment to them, and they are a unique and strange electrical phenomenon, otherwise known as tubes or valves in Europe. Well, these are very fascinating little machines unto themselves that where you have tube amplification, and this is an electrical process. And by electrifying tubes, you're producing very unique energies, and they have a unique resonance. And this is highly noted in the musical world, where when you amplify something with tubes, you get a fantastic sound over solid state. Now, why is that? Well, because tubes are so special. But you're not really dealing with, if you put these on certain meters and other things, well, you're getting the same in and the same out. Well, that's right, but there's a whole tone you're getting different to it. So it is important to understand that there is an ELF wave energies that are connected to these machines, and you want to make sure that you are connected to these units. And there are many other factors. So it is a good idea to, if you're using any kind of energies, and of course this has been overlooked, to the fact that you being connected to it. If you want to move an object or something, well, it's a good idea to have a copper type wire formed in a coil that may be connected to your third eye, your hands, which a lot of energy comes out of your hands. Energy goes from the left and out the right. Well, this is a way of producing. Now, these are so minor that they could never affect anything directly. You're not going to run something from your connection that way. Now, I remember somebody making a comment to this one time, and it did affect me, saying, well, why do you need this? Why do people, particularly spoon benders, if it's a psychic process, which, of course, this is a very profound question. Why do you need to touch it? Now, almost every spoon bender is touching it. Well, isn't that interesting? Uri Geller, the most famous, is famous for touching it. He strokes it, not bending it per se, but a lot of people handle things as well, particularly to help the process a little. You put a little bit of pressure, which would never bend it on its own, but you're adding even physical force there. But what you're adding is these all-important ELF waves, which are transmitted through physical contact. I hope everybody gets that. And that means physical contact to dials, to machines, and our upcoming psychotronic helmets, where you're wearing stuff that takes the energies that are in your head and around it and starts focusing it into a field that is very, very slight, but when it comes to the moving of occultons and everything, the interacting is very potent. So a lot of people can say, well, you don't need transmitters, you don't need amplifiers, you're just working in this, basically this, it's not even really quantum physics, but a crude quantum physics understanding of something where you connect to that person, that target through a photograph, you have the energy and you're sending it to them per quantum physics, which really isn't, because what you're doing is sending information, energetic informational fields, as I call them, to a particular target that then changes it. Now, quantum physics says you can't do that. They say that the two items are united, but that you cannot send information. That's what they're saying. Which, of course, is stupid and wrong, but... Stupid and wrong? Is that what it says under the definition of science in the dictionary? So the whole idea is that... that's how things are looked at. So there is this component to it. Now, this may be also moving huge amounts of unknown energies through the piggyback reality of this ELF fields are being used to carry occulton information or psion information to a particular target. So your psychic energies, which people have trouble saying are real, noted physicist, theoretical physicist, meaning, I think all day and me think it work. Sean Carroll states that there is no energies coming from you because he can't detect them. Nothing comes from your brain, you're a meat puppet. And this is a well-known person who's a theoretical physicist. So his whole reality is thinking about things that should work. But he's based in a box. He's not thinking about things that are abstract. He's thinking about things that he knows about to then understand physics. And he believes that almost everything is figured out already anyway. There's only a tiny percent they don't know. They just have to figure out how to integrate it, which is in itself pretty shitty. But the point is that we have to understand the way that science thinks. So they don't believe you can transfer information from one quantum physics field to another. It's there, the field is connected, that's it. But you can't exchange information. This would be something that would go faster than the speed of light, and this is impossible. So while they think that quantum physics is different and than Einstein. Basically, they're going with Einstein's theory that you can't go faster than the speed of light. And all of these theoretical physicists that I've listened to recently all state that they believe that there is nothing faster than the speed of light, and they believe in Einstein's theories, even though they consider themselves quantum physicists. Huh? I don't get that. So they're stuck in the old ways, the old thinking by Einstein, who certainly was interesting, but wrong. And it even goes through their experiments, proves it wrong. But they still buy into that theory. So the whole idea is that you need to have electrical components that connect to each other. And you also need this for transferring of it. Things like doing things purely psychically is not enough. You have to use this elf wave energy. Example, if you have an amulet, a sigil amulet, well, connecting with it psychically is fine, but you should physically touch it. There's a certain elf waves coming from a physical reality coming from the amulet that needs to be transferred, and that's bringing a whole bunch of other stuff with it. This is how you get better results. So when you're trying to send energy to something, you want to, let's say you're using some sort of psychic transmitter. Well, you could sit over it and just say, well, you just psychically concentrate on it and it goes in there. Well, it does, but at a weak level. How do you get that up? And the whole idea is about subtle energy physics is to make them not subtle. So the whole idea is, how do you do that? Well, you transfer energy through a actual conducting material, which are basically metals, which metals are very fascinating as well. Gold, silver, copper are very interesting active energies, because you can't put bacterias generally on copper, because the copper will destroy the bacteria. So why is that? It shows you how active copper's energy field is that, and there's lots of copper medicines that were being developed. They're even thinking in hospitals now, making more things out of copper sheeting. All of this is important because any kind of bacteria, viruses that go onto copper goes after and kills it. Well, isn't that fascinating? So I was the one who pioneered using copper rubbing plates and plates on radionic machines. Why not use something highly conductive and active? People who use stainless steel and other things, they're not conductive. Well, in terms of the level that copper and other things, they don't have that component of keeping bacteria out. So while they are conductive in electricity ways, they don't have that kind of supernatural conductivity to them. So this is why we always use carrier waves. If something is just emitting from a machine, you basically have an input and an output plate, and you're sending energy from the input to the output. And then this is supposed to, through quantum physics entanglement theory, is that you're sending information to that, which of course that is not part of the theory of quantum physics. They say that's not possible. But, of course, practitioners know better than that as you're trying to do that. But what does that create? Well, now you're sending with psions, you're connecting to that person and sending them the energy that is in your particular tool, machine, sigil, etc. So those energetic fields are being sent there. And you don't need to be physically connected 100%, but the whole idea is using tools and so forth that connect you directly to the target. Using amplifiers is super critical. There's a huge amount of data how non-electric machines just don't have the kick that electric ones. This has been verified through many research studies when this was something that was done. And has been documented by a particular nurse in this field, which I'm still trying to find that article, which was quite fascinating, an old journal out from the 70s on radionics. But it makes sense. There's something to this. So you need to amplify, but you need to amplify in a special way, and those amplifiers are not just tube amplifiers. You have to give them a certain subtle energy component by adding things to them. Now, our tube amplifiers are not just tube amplifiers. They have all sorts of things that increase the resonance of tubes, but the tubes are important to start off with. And of course, there are many different tubes and many different frequencies, and as you start getting into some more elaborate tube amplification, you're talking about a lot of money for the components. We try and keep it down to the simple ones, so it's affordable. The other thing is that the minor, and again, we're not trying to necessarily transmit at a strong level, even though, who knows, could that help? Now, subtle energies have been transmitted by the Russians to the West for many, many years now. It must be 20, 30 years, where they've been sending garbage, toxic, unhealthful energies through giant antennas to the West. And this is when the West tend to have taken a dump years after these things were set up. So there is a component here. Now, they may be sending microwaves or whatever they're doing, but there's an awful lot of very subtle, energetic informational fields combined with all these microwaves and radio waves and everything else. And this is the information that you contain within the crude field that starts making its effect. So you produce this psion energy, your psychic or some sort of energetic field there, informational energetic field that is created in one way or another, radionic machines are the classic way. You then broadcast this to a particular target. Now, some people are just going to send it to a photograph. Well, as I said, this does work. How well? I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, it does work, but we're not looking for things that work. We're looking for awesome manifestations in the shortest period of time. How do you do that? Well, you start using physical components. Now, you want to get the energy into the atmosphere so it can be brought to the target easier. We don't know how these subtle informational energetic fields, what do they encounter? How strong are they? They're running into a lot of other clogged atmospheric problems, and this could be lessening the degree. So let's push it out there. Let's get it out into the atmosphere. I mean, we've been planning for many years to shoot these radionic signals, these subtle energy fields, to satellites, the same way that you get, and have those satellites then grab this and broadcast them as part of other signals, as a carrier wave. This certainly would be a fascinating test to see if this affected people. You could do this through your cell phone, right? Sending energy through your cell phone to a tower near you, and this would then be broadcast with cell phone type energies out to whomever. Now, if you wanted to affect masses of people, this certainly would be interesting, but even if you're trying to affect another individual. And of course, one of the best signatures of an individual is their phone number. There's only one of those for that person. So you could do these, and many advanced hints I've just given people here are very advanced ways of using this technology. But the technology is the fact of piggybacking and using these. So there is a component. There are elf ways that carry information and are part of you. So if you're going to bend a spoon, you generally don't put it in front of you. And it would be very interesting to, even though that process seems to work, it seems to be part of it. But there also seems to be a transmitting of certain physical, undefinable physical energies. Because most people that bend spoons hold them. Okay? They hold them. They stroke them. Certainly, Uri Geller is famous for this. And one thing he's criticized for was the fact that why do you have to touch it? He's doing something. There's something on his hands. All these kind of things. But the bottom line seems to be the fact that they're creating a strong, subtle energy ELF field, ultra low frequency field, is a physical reality that the actual psions are piggybacking on to cause these effects, because almost everybody does that. The other thing is to weaken the metal, which is another thing. But if you don't put a little bit of very minor physical energy into them for them to bend, well, oftentimes the energetic informational field that softened that metal, it just doesn't break off. Sometimes it does, and of course, it's certainly an interesting research. But in the end, they always tell people to hold it, to stroke it, to tell it to bend. Now, a lot of people, it bends without them overly touching it. Other people are able to weaken the metal, then take their hands and actually twist the spoon, and it looks like a, cork screw. Now, you couldn't do this physically. So, oh, well, you touched it, you did that yourself. You can't do that physically with a spoon. You can't make it look like a corkscrew very easily unless that metal was softened to a fantastic degree. And I've seen this, and it's been done by many, many people, including Army generals like General Stubblebine, who was in charge of the remote viewing program initially, and many, many other peoples. And there are bending parties going on to this day where people do this. But it's not that they spin it with their mind alone. Now, I'm assuming you maybe can get to that, but I'm not sure there is a value to that. The point is that softening metals so you can turn it into a corkscrew looking is mind-boggling. Who cares if you touched it? Oh, it's rigged, it's over. Well, people who think like that should do what they're good at. Flushing their head down the toilet, I would say, to start with. So the whole idea is that this is kind of absurdity when you get into that. The point is that being able to soften metal is probably a lot more than being able to bend a spoon by not doing that. So the whole idea is that this is a reality, and that's the component. Something that people overlook. So if you're not physically making contact, and a lot of these things, as I said, we had in the past, I made wishing type machines, and they have handles on them, copper handles that go into the machine. This is getting that important energy in there. We had headbands. Well, that's right. You're getting the physical component from your third eye, temporal lobes, and these have very measurable ELF waves. There is... people have this all the time when they test how your actual brain is firing. So EEGs, is that what they call these? Well, they're able to detect the frequencies there. Well, where do you think those frequencies are going? Well, you certainly can do it the hard way and strain and just project them through your scions, where they pick that up and use it as a carrier. But it's better to use it as a straight carrier wave, and that means you connect yourself to something. At the very least, you make sure you touch something. Now, energy generally flows through the left, out the right, and can go out both hands as well. But that's the general understanding. You have to find out where it's at. Maybe both hands. That's why with our wishing machines, we use both hands. You want things that touch the third eye. You want things that connect yourself to something directly. So if you want to just sit there and meditate over something, well, that certainly is a way to do it. But what I would suggest is that let's say you wanted to charge something. Oh, would you put your hand over? Well, people have done this. And, people who have high degrees of empowerment generally can do this and even charge things as absurd as cotton gauze. But what I would recommend as a charging is that you have a round copper plate. That copper plate is connected to two handles, which are copper tubing, which then connect to copper wires that go to the plate. And to kind of finish it off as one of the better tools, you have a headband that connects to that plate. So you're connected in three. Each hand is connected plus a band to it. Now you're getting an awesome empowering. One of the things is that people keep not using common sense, thinking that, oh, well, it's just a psychic power, which are very difficult to measure with common schmientist instruments. So they disregard this, saying, we don't need any of that. There's none of that. Well, it's not true. There is this component. And some healers have been actually shown to have a high electromagnetic charge in them. The brain goes into 8 hertz. So the point is that you are projecting all these energies. So you should be connected to something, whether it's a machine, whether you're trying to gain numbers. Being physically connected, at the very least by touching something, which is what you do when you dial in a radionic instrument in, is starting this flow of energy. So lots of energy are coming out of your hands, something people overlook. You have huge amounts of sensing energy in the vagal nerve, which is the nerve at the back of your head, which I've talked about before, your super sensing area. Where you receive information in for survival is the back of your head, I should say more, where your spine connects to your brain. And this is something that the energies are clawed. We're going to go into this in another discussion fairly soon. Something very overlooked that I discovered and have talked about in the past is saying, why is the back of the head? Well, it's not really the back of the head per se, even though there's some of that. It's more of where your spine connects to your brain, which is a super sensor. You have all these energies going there. And there are ways of stimulating this, and more importantly, is getting the flow of energy going there, which could be a key to super empowerment, and we're going to talk about that. But having these areas is critically important, that you connect yourself. And this is something, again, you see that any places? You don't. I started it many years ago. Some people with wishing machines picked up on the handles and the headbands, and this is something that is now copied to a lesser degree, but they don't get it. Like everything else, it's either copied from me and then at the time of production, and then if they fall away from it because others are not doing it. So the point is, when we get into all these things, what does that mean? So it means that you have to be connected and use the carrier wave. Just the reason why the components in these machines need to be electrical in nature. And a lot of electrical components are made from all sorts of natural materials. Another thing people don't understand. And they cause all sorts of interesting energies. What is a potentiometer? What is a tunable capacitor? Well, this is very interesting because you're handling the flow of energy. And there's the crude electrical energy, and then there's the lesser amount, the subtle energy physics, where you tune a machine and you have an energetic field created there from these super subtle energy fields. Now, you add a little bit of ultra low frequencies to that, which are measurable, and you've now got a kick-ass device. And this, of course, is what everybody is missing. And, of course, watch for our new machines and our new discoveries coming out in these areas, but this is why it's so critical to have that. Psychic power is not just a subtle energy alternative occulton field, which are not really hertzy in nature purely. But what you generate, psions, on the other hand, are based to a lesser or greater degree in actual Hertzian energy fields, because you are projecting those out there. Now, there's the unknown component of psions. What are they made up of? Well, I know what they're made up of, and of course we'll talk about that another time, but there is a plain and simple ultra low frequency that goes along with that, which is measurable and has been measured, is being measured in all the kind of brain frequency experiments that go out there. What frequency is your brain in? Well, we all know that 8 hertz is where all masters work from. And the reason why we try and reproduce that as much as we can on our own. The whole idea is you need to have 8 hertz frequency generators around you all the time. And when you're working in these things, you need to make sure that you have that energy there. So we know that. It's been proven for many, many years that is the coveted frequency that you need to get your head into. The bottom line is that it also needs to be understood that there are many hidden energies that you are unfamiliar with that use that energy as a carrier frequency. Now, I've said this before, I don't consider 8 hertz to be the Grail frequency. I believe this is a portal frequency. I believe that that's what your mind gets into. You go into 8 hertz, and then we go into subtle energy frequencies that are not Hertzian in nature. They are now getting into this whole other realm of occulton frequencies, which are not easily defined in this particular day and age. So, With that understood, probably is very confusing for the average person out there, but we will cover all this stuff, and of course, that's what real technology does. So, when you get people that are not amplifying, when they're not using electrical components, well, this means you have a fairly weak unit. Now, do they work? Well, they do work at a certain level, but most people don't want weak tools. And of course, some people will get excellent results because they're psychically strong and they're able to push through all these things. But even if you're psychically strong, why use all that energy just to affect someone? Why not have something that is energized to a level that you can get fantastic results in half the time? So it's foolish not to do this. So this is a major area that is important to people. And while there may be a place for certain non-electric but properly amplified in other ways, things that may carry electrical frequencies, natural stuff, crystals, etc., you may be able to get some greater effects, and there may be a basis for this for people that don't want to use electric or want to use what would be considered a unit to take anywhere, use anywhere. All of this, there is a certain appropriateness to this, but you still have to have a highly designed unit that is non-electric. It's got to have crystals, coils, got to have a whole bunch of things in it that will create a energetic field, an actual Hertzian type field within the unit without the use of plug-in electricity. So this gets into so many different areas, but hopefully that brings a clarity of what really is going on with these two types of energy. And regardless of the physical results here, in terms of if you were making something or buying something, it's very important to understand that the psychoenergetic field, the psions, are made up of a certain amount of ELF waves, ultra low frequency informational energetic fields, and to some extent Hertzian fields in general. So hopefully that helps. Until next time.